Hello,
Are you
hello.
ready?
Sunrise Extra on a
Ready or not?
Tuesday. Ready or not? Here we are.
Oh.
Good morning, everyone. Live in our newsroom at 7 a.m. post Sunrise television show. Today we are talking about something that is very SMH, shaking my head.
I had to look that up the other day.
Cool kids.
Someone put that on one of my comments about SMH. I'm like, is that an insult? What does that mean? Now I know, shaking my head. It was in that context, in that case, it was not an insult.
Oh, okay. Good.
Yeah, it was okay.
Sometimes it is.
Yes.
So today's story is a petition that is going around in Jackson County, which is in eastern Oregon, and Douglas County, which is Roseburg, where they're trying to get enough signatures, and I don't know the exact number they need, to put an issue on the November ballot. And the issue is they want to, can we throw that picture up? Hopefully, if we have it. Working on it. The map. Where they want to incorporate huge swaths of eastern Oregon and southern Oregon and call it Greater Idaho and make it just a giant piece of Idaho. And so, because they say that a lot of people here's the picture. So all of that green, they would want to make Greater Idaho. And you see basically
into
from
Northern
Portland,
California
Eugene,
even.
That would all be what's left of Oregon. And into California. It's getting greedy.
That's
So
yeah.
they're saying that all the folks that live in this green area are fairly conservative, and they would prefer, according to this group, the more conservative laws, like gun laws, environmental laws, and cultural issues that Idaho has, that Oregon doesn't really go along with.
You know, it's of course, yeah. You know, that's like the easy way out almost. It's almost like you're at the playground, and I only want to play with these kids because they agree with me and everything that I say and do.
Yes.
It doesn't work that way, right? That's not the way the country is supposed to be. And I think it's in some ways nice that we have this difference of opinion throughout our state. I mean, it is clear, no kidding. We're not breaking any news here that the people within the city limits of Portland think and vote differently than the people that live out in the rural areas of eastern Oregon. That's just generally speaking, that's the way it goes.
Sure.
And there seems to be maybe not so much in this state because it's been sort of one-sided come election time for a while. But the fact is there is a balance there, right, between the different lifestyles and the different ways of thinking. This is like, hey, you know what? We can't overcome you over there in the city, so we're just going to create our own little area over here, and we don't have to deal with you anymore.
But there's so many hoops to jump through, even if they get all of the signatures for a ballot initiative. After voters passed it, then the legislatures in Oregon and Idaho would have to sign off, and then Congress would have to sign off.
Yeah.
So
that's why it's
that is
a shake of the head situation.
Shot.
Like, so if we can pull up that viewer voice poll from this morning, our morning poll, we were asking you. And I think we should have kind of worded it differently, but we said, do you think Eastern and Southern Oregon could ever become part of Idaho? I think the answer is 100% no. It couldn't. It just realistically wouldn't happen.
Why do you say that?
Just because of all those hoops that, I mean, both counties would have to say yes. Both states would have to say yes. Then Congress. I mean, that's
it's not gonna happen. It's not gonna happen.
I just want to know, do you think
the bigger question is,
do you think more conservative people should be their own state?
We're so divided. Why are we having the discussion? And that's what we should put our efforts into fixing. Is why is that even a discussion? Is that maybe we should all figure out a way that if people are so left out of the process or feel so left out of the process, that's a problem, and that's a problem in a lot of things, not just politics, right?
Yeah.
So how do we fix that?
I don't know if there's
maybe the effort should be going into that.
That's why I don't know. You were saying like we've got it pretty fair, I think.
Nationwide, it seems to have worked out in recent years. Now, if you, I say that carefully. I mean, obviously, if you were, let's just go back to the last presidential election. If you were voting against Donald Trump or not for Donald Trump, you would say, well, that election didn't work out very well. If you were voting for him.
We want the popular vote.
But the fact that in many of our elections in recent years, and I'm going back 20 years now, those presidential elections have come down to the wire. In some cases, we haven't known who won until the next day because our country is sort of balancing itself out.
Until the Supreme Court ruled. It goes back to 2000.
Right, exactly. That's the one I was thinking of first and foremost. But I think that we do have a balance. And I don't think it's completely one-sided, one way or the other. Our elections would show that it is actually split very close to down the middle. And the politicians know that they really have to win over not their party, because they usually have those people, but it's like, hey, if you're on the fence, if you're not sure, if you're undecided, if you're sort of a Republican but not a diehard, maybe I can win you over if I'm a Democrat. That's where these victories are won, and that's where these elections are won. I don't think it's a problem for Oregon. It's just it's a part of our country.
Oh my gosh, people have many, many opinions. I'm looking on our Facebook live stream. Lorette never happens. Eula Decker says, keep things like they are. Leave taxes as they are. Pat Harrington says, you're right, Chris, by the way. Let's see.
I can tell you something interesting, Brenda, as you're looking there. We put the text line up on the screen, and it remains up on the screen. So whether you're watching us on the YouTube channel right now, our KGW YouTube channel, or on our Facebook stream, you can always chime in through our text line, 503-226-5111. Rod was wondering, because we had some texters out there early on, where are they texting from? I'm just going to try to scan through quickly. We have a viewer from Baker County. We have a viewer from Molalla. We have one from the eastern side of the state. I'm just going to go through.
But we don't know which way they're saying.
The Dalles.
Is that right?
Right now, I'm just giving you the answer to the question of where are they coming from.
Right.
But it seems to me it's a lot of rural areas. Central Oregon. Now I can go back and see what their comments are exactly. Cascadia. I can go back and look at their comments, but right now it just shows me that early on a lot of these viewers are coming from some of the rural parts of our state. So I'm going to click on this one. And you know what would be helpful, which is an extra task on your part, but if you can mention your name somewhere in your text, otherwise we're just calling out a phone number and not a name. But we have this viewer who says, I'm in Molalla, and I want the Idaho move because I'm conservative, and says, they say, I want to get away from Kate Brown. So again, this is this idea of like, the vote isn't working in my favor, so now I just want to kind of change where I live.
Oh, look at this one.
Well, Brenda said it might be easier just to move to Idaho.
I love Idaho. I would move somewhere rural in the new Idaho, probably Kellogg, but might consider the new La Grande, Idaho. Doesn't that sound weird?
La Grande, Idaho.
That's pretty fascinating.
A lot of our rural folks watching this morning, chiming in on the text line. Lori from Canby texting in this morning. Good morning, Lori from Canby, saying, tired of the liberal politics. Tired of the liberal, why can I say that? Liberal politics.
So WM Gray's on our live stream Facebook. People who want to live in Idaho should move to Idaho. Would it make sense to move the northern border south so people can live in Washington?
I don't know. It's not
We don't
gonna
want more
actually
people in
happen.
Washington, do we? I'm going to
We have 50 perfect states. It's like the most perfect number. I mean, I guess you still would.
Yeah, you would still have 50
You would
states.
still have 50 states, but I mean,
It's very Texas-like of
I
Idaho to
just
want to do
think
this. It would be a huge portion of land.
this is like all of these apocalyptic like books and situations you've ever read, you know, over 100 years in the future. I was just reading The Handmaid's Tale and the sequel to Handmaid's Tale, and this is what happens like way in the future.
But you
of,
know
like,
what
they created different boundaries in the United States, and like only these people with religious beliefs of these kind live here, and they're all fighting against each other, and things go whoop downhill very quickly.
Let's just say what's interesting. I think this is a fair statement. That the state boundaries, for the most part in our country, were drawn up when there wasn't as much of a difference in views between country folk and big city folk, because primarily there weren't as many big cities.
Right.
So I'm going to assume there was more of a similarity culture. And now over time, and if you look at a political map on election night, it's very much big cities in most given states will vote this way, and then the rural counties vote another way. Right. So this divide has kind of been birthed, I'm going to assume I'm correct, since things have gotten different since the original state lines were drawn up. Does that make sense?
No, absolutely. It is very Civil War-like, in just the fact that we have two very opposite sides of the fence. Now, back in the Civil War times, it was easy, right? You've got the northern states and we have the southern states, and there was an easy divide. For the most part, these people believed one way and these people believed in another. You're looking at me like, where the heck are you going?
I'm like, wow, we've gone all the way back to the Civil War.
All I'm saying is it would be
How did
very
we get
hard.
here?
It would be very hard, is all I'm saying, Brenda, to draw the lines of a civil war today, because it's not just dividing the country in half or up and down or left and right. It's because it's cities versus rural, and they're all over the country.
Yeah. But
So Megan Bowen, she's very to the point this morning. She said she absolutely does not like this. And she says, stop giving this garbage any airtime. salute that you
That's
know what
why
you like and don't
I
like.
think
Does
it's
she
just
live here in
silly,
Portland?
but
Do we
it
know?
is.
I don't know.
You
She
don't
didn't
know?
say. Mm-mm.
Might I add, thank you for watching.
There's that. We all appreciate that. Thank you.
We have a caller. We have a texter.
Caller?
We have a texter.
Yep.
503-226-5111, the number to text. And
Somebody said, "Are you going to call him back?"
add your name if you would, but right now I just know that this texter says totally against this idea of Idaho expanding its borders into Oregon and even parts of Northern California. This texter says their level of education and political Republican mindset is very destructive to democracy and justice. So that's a texter from the other side of the fence, because it seemed like early on most of the texters were in favor of this big Idaho.
So Marlene Taylor Bozarth.
Oh, we're getting a lot of texts. I like this.
So keep Oregon together. Portland needs a different management. Eastern and southern part of the state gets left out when Portland gets the most consideration. So I do think that there is a lot to that, though. Multnomah County is the most populous county in the state, and so the bulk of the people live here, and the scales tip this way because fewer people live out in some of the eastern counties. But you can't, I mean, I get that. It's like, how do you give them what they feel is representation for their issues? How do the people over here even really get what their issues are?
Yeah.
You know, how many people spend any time out there? That's what their representatives are for, but you know, we hear it time and time and time again. They don't feel like we pay attention. It's almost like we feel about New York City or the East Coast. It's like the media, the national media. Something happens in New York, my God, it's like everybody's issue. But over here we're like, well, nobody ever talks about, you know, as much of what happens on the West Coast. So I mean, I kind of get that.
Vancouver is the small stepsister to Seattle. I will tell you, if you live in Clark County, you feel like, you know, a lot of the things that our tax dollars go to in Clark County just end up doing big projects up in Seattle, and that we don't really get heard much. So,
Yes, very true.
But in fairness, if that much of the population is paying that much into the quote-unquote infrastructure and all that, then should they get, I mean, I don't know.
Well, it's the same thing,
but it's the same thing here in Portland and Multnomah County, right? I mean,
not right. It's the same thing on a TV basis. And people call us from, I'm going to say Baker City, because
This
I
was
just
a really
marvel
good
at the
point you
beauty.
made this morning, yeah.
Oh, this is a new point, actually.
Might not be as good as the last one.
The TV landscape. Everybody's like, Baker City, you never talk to us about it. Well, the hard reality is, we're a for-profit business, and our ad dollars primarily come from Multnomah County.
Hey.
And because of that, we spend more time talking about largely Portland, and most of our viewers live in Portland.
We are working hard to expand out of that.
It's the same thing.
You're giving away trade secrets.
Our populous base is one spot, and that gets the most tax dollars or time from a TV station in this case.
But Ron, you were saying they would benefit so much more greatly from getting, you know,
weather
Idaho
standpoint.
news, which I think they do get.
From a weather standpoint, I'm thinking of far eastern Oregon, Baker County and down into Harney County. Their weather and climate is much more similar to Boise, Idaho, than it is to Portland.
Right.
So from that vantage point, I think they would be better served if they got more Idaho news than Oregon news.
This is a tough area to be a forecaster for. I mean, not to completely change subjects, but that just brings up a point. You're right. I mean, when I watch her every day, it's like, okay, I can tell you what it's going to be like, but I have to split it up. It's the valley, it's the coast, it's Eastern Oregon, it's all those. If you were in Missouri, right, it didn't matter necessarily where you were in Missouri. If you gave a forecast, it would be kind of widespread throughout the state for the most part. I mean, it doesn't change from corner to corner in that state.
The only time it would change if there's a big cold front that's blasting through northern Missouri that doesn't make it to southern Missouri. It's very similar, you're right.
And here's another one for you, Drew. It's not just Eastern Oregon weather. There are microclimates across Eastern Oregon. There's lots of them.
Yeah.
So it's, you know, there's, you know, I mean, you get out to the Steens and the Wallowas, and there's
But the bottom
they have their
line is,
microclimates.
once you pop over the Cascades, everything's more similar to Idaho than Portland, Oregon. That's just factual as far as weather and climate goes, period.
We are setting a record today, the most texts ever received on a subject matter. We pumped up the number a lot this morning, I feel like, so that's why we're getting so many texts.
Thank you for texting and participating.
These are all from one texter. No, nada, nope, like no, 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 and then they made a comment about my Civil War comment. Civil War, wow, no, and then says, that was kind of Brenda's comment. She didn't even say anything. She looked at me like, what are you doing? The people that are wanting this don't even vote. That's the problem. You want change, get up, get moving, and be heard.
Well, that's always a good statement.
I
Good,
love the
powerful
text. I
statement.
hate that we don't have names attached to these texts.
Oh, I want to hear from Bubba.
Oh, we got Bubba. We have a name. Hi, this is Bubba. Hello, Bubba. I would love to be a part of Idaho. Just keep me out of California. Just don't put me in there.
What else? I love Idaho.
Yeah, this is from another texter. I love, oh, this is what I think we read this one already. I love Idaho, would move somewhere rural in the new Idaho, probably Kellogg.
New Idaho.
Kellogg's got a couple of
Got great potatoes.
Here's one we haven't read before. Really, if the radical pro-gun ultra-conservatives want to leave Oregon, I say see ya. That's
That
from
is
our
from
text
the
line.
texter, not
Yes.
from Drew.
Thank you.
It is interesting to me, and full disclosure, I'm originally from small Iowa farmland, and the values that I grew up with because of that are primarily so-called red. That's just the world that I grew up in.
I'm curious why.
Because I just think it's sad that through time there has developed such a hard line between, I'm just going to say, city folk think this way and country folk think that way, which is kind of a simplistic way to break this down. And it seems to be getting worse, not better.
Oh, absolutely.
And I just, why can't more people understand that things
But
this way
also,
and that
something
way?
like this makes it 100 times worse. Of like, okay, I'm putting a state line between you and me because we're not alike at all. Like that's segregation almost. Like,
yeah, you're right.
Only people who have these beliefs are going to live in this state.
Yeah.
Like, that is not going to make us better.
Right.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. And I still believe that we're more alike than not.
Well, you're much wiser. Well, I tend to fly this way and fly that way, and Brenda is the center of calm thoughtfulness, which I appreciate about you.
Yes.
I appreciate your ability to fly, though. That's pretty cool.
Okay, while you guys ponder that, we are doing all this week a series on the future.
Oh, yes.
And there is a fascinating guy that used to work for Intel, and his job title is a futurist. You talked to him.
Actually, Tim did.
Tim did.
We piggybacked off that interview because
you
he had a
talked
very
to a
limited
bunch about
time
the
with him. But
transportation.
we had a nice little 6-minute. Boy, he went on about how the transportation is going to change. It has to change, right?
see it
We'll
in the
get into
next
that
10
for a
years.
second. But the very opening soundbite, which actually got edited out in the final process, was the future of transportation is going to be autonomous, shared electric vehicles. It has to be for our survival, and there's a couple of reasons for that. First off, we know what our emissions goals are. We're trying to reduce emissions. The transportation sector alone contributes 40% of the greenhouse gas emissions in the state of Oregon. That's according to the DEQ. Now, 40%, that's big. That's everything. So really, let me rephrase that. That is the largest part of the pie. Yeah. So that's going to be the thing that will make the most improvement immediately if we were able to turn that off. So that's the transitioning to cleaner fuels or to electric.
Do you want to watch your story to explain it? We've got it ready to play. Let's watch it.
We don't dive that deep into it, but
Let's
that
talk
part.
about it after. Let's watch it.
Here come the flying cars. Well, not exactly, says futurist Steve Brown. Think more like scaled-up drones that can bypass traffic and zip a dozen passengers from Gresham to Hillsborough in 25 minutes.
I'm tracking over 100 companies that are vying to be the flying car companies of the future. So this is a serious space.
While that may be a little more into the future, self-driving cars are nearly here. They're already undergoing vigorous testing. ODOT has a whole team on this, an autonomous vehicle task force, and they are considering what changes might need to occur on our roads to make this happen. They're looking at things like stripes on the road and LED signs that all self-driving cars can actually process. For the car manufacturers, there's accounting for everything else that might come their way.
Unusual things you might see on the road, things that humans can instinctively adapt to or reason their way through, but which you have to specifically program a computer to respond to.
Okay, so we're not giving up driving just yet, but here now, electric vehicles. Good chance one of your neighbors has one. In the last decade, the number of electric cars on the road in Oregon has soared from 600 in 2010 to nearly 30,000 today.
Most projections say sometime in the next 3 to 5 years, there will be a crossover when electric vehicles, certainly on the total cost of ownership, if not also the upfront costs, will be comparable to a internal combustion engine vehicle. In Oregon right now, about 40% of greenhouse gases comes from the transportation sector. And of that, about 60% come from light-duty cars. If you want to reduce greenhouse gases, you really have to move towards much cleaner transportation options.
Almost a decade ago, West Coast states installed DC fast charging stations along the West Coast Electric Highway, 44 just along I-5. Fast forward to 2020.
There's about 8 or 9 private companies in the state of Oregon that are putting in electric charging networks.
While most of your charging will be done at home, you'll have many more options when you're out on the open road.
Company stores, factory outlet mall. Oh, hi.
Hi.
Hi. My earpiece went out and I didn't know what I was talking about. I was just saying I was over in Seaside and in the little factory outlet mall, they had a whole Tesla charging station. There was 6 Teslas, 6 of them in Seaside, all plugged in.
I didn't know Tesla people shop
Well, you
at the
got to
factory
have them,
outlets.
like,
It's kinda
I guess, you know, up and down the coast.
on the beach.
They've got so much invested in their
Yeah.
car that they. No, I'm just kidding.
I thought that was kind of fascinating. But yeah, you got to have them.
So the proliferation of electric vehicles is like the amount of cars on the road now in Oregon. It's like doubling every year. So we start off with 600, 1,200. It's doubling. We're up
Really?
to 30,000. So in a couple of years,
Wow.
Yeah. With that crossover point and making electric vehicles truly as affordable, cost up front as gas.
Yeah.
When they can do that, when we can do that, and we're not far, like as Mary from ODOT suggested, there we're maybe 4 or 5 years away from that crossover point. It'll just, because think about, there's no maintenance. You're not doing oil change.
You just have windshield wipers
and
gas.
she also had another soundbite that we didn't use for this piece, but she's like, have you ever driven an electric car? They're fun. They just go. You step on it, it's boom. You know,
Yeah.
like.
EV8 is crazy. I do that for the carpools,
Yeah.
and the first time I got in there, I'm like, is it on?
Right.
It takes a little
This
getting
is
used
a
to.
W car.
You open the hood, there's nothing there. What is this? Where do I plug it in? You know.
I can't remember.
I was surprised because we were in a car accident, so we just had to get a new car, as I think all you guys know. And I spent one afternoon on my computer just kind of Googling around for either hybrid or electric car choices. And I realized we have some, but I was surprised at how few there still are, because this has been such a talk from Detroit. I think Ford at one point said, we're going to go nearly all electric, and boy,
Okay.
it hasn't happened yet.
Well,
All
there's a
right,
mandate
so
to do it by what, 2025
the
or
electric
something?
pickup truck is coming.
It's coming. Okay.
The electric pickup truck, I believe Ford is going to be one of the pioneers in that. Don't quote me on this exactly, but I know it is very close. It's not like this model year or next model year. There will be a rollout of electric trucks, pickup trucks, and actually Mary from ODOT said that's going to be a big game changer because people love their pickup trucks. They like,
Sure, yeah.
and the SUVs. So the SUVs are going to become more available, electric SUVs. So that'll be a big game changer. But ultimately, fast forward down the road to some of the other things that we deal with. Okay, pollution. Well, that helps with pollution because we're not emitting anymore, right? Mm-hmm. But congestion. This is where we start getting into the autonomous part. When we start getting into self-driving cars, it's thought that, hey, self-driving cars can drive better than humans.
Right.
The hope is, or maybe we self-drive on the freeways, but then we take over when we get on the side streets. But you could drive closer, get more people out there, get more people in shared vehicles, because look at all those cars out on Jefferson Street right now that are just parked. Maybe I'm not saying that. This is not my thought. It's just maybe you get those cars off the road. We don't have to build bigger roads. Maybe we just have more shared autonomous vehicles that get around. You just dial it up on your phone, go in here, just like you do in Uber.
Right.
Boom, boom, and then that car gets right out to pick up the next person rather than parking on the street. I mean,
But is that gonna
95% of our cars are just sitting on the road, doing nothing.
Yeah.
Think about, real estate's expensive, right? So
I would do
realize
a car shared.
it sounds
what are
far
they
out,
called?
but
There's
it's like we don't consider.
Car to go.
We don't consider that. We don't
but
consider
those
that.
prices are going to have to come down. I'm just thinking,
yes.
could I afford to
Yeah.
do a Lyft 20 days of work to week right now? And the answer is no, I couldn't.
Yeah.
That'd
No.
be more expensive than my gas and car payment is.
Correct.
Yeah.
Would
So
it be?
those prices have to
But
come down.
but if it was a shared autonomous vehicle where you literally just were part of a fleet, you dialed your car up at 3 in the morning when you come into work, you get here, and then it goes and services somebody else. and then somebody else, and then somebody else, and then when you're ready,
I would do that.
And then if you could be
'Cause
part of
I'm
that,
not gonna take the bus
if you
or
were part of that
Max.
network, right?
Yeah.
And maybe it's a BMW network, and maybe it's the Toyota network. That's the.
I mean, as long as it's
I have a date
affordable
with the Today Show.
and it's at the time that I need it, I'm in for everything. But
Yeah.
it's got to be something I can afford, and it's got to be at a time I can get to work.
I'll leave you with
Except if you have
with this
kids, you're
thought.
gonna be putting car
I'll
seats
leave
in
you
and
with this
out.
thought. Okay, so this is finally, Steve. One of the things that Steve said is that there are some projections. I should throw this soundbite probably into the web story that say that shared autonomous vehicles could ultimately reduce our cost to 10% of what they are now, if you consider insurance, maintenance, and buying them. What if
Well, that's true. I
15
didn't
of
think
us
about
all
insurance.
shared? What if 15 of us all shared one car? I mean, we couldn't because of the schedule, but I mean, if we did.
Yeah. No, I hope you don't mind driving to my boys' soccer practice every day. That.
No, not that. But
You know, that's where it
it's
gets
an
sticky.
interesting
Yes, no, absolutely.
thought. You know,
Yeah. All right.
I like driving. I
Bye,
still
guys.
do.
See you tomorrow.